Hey everyone, thanks for watching. I got a really exciting video for you today. We're actually going to do something a little different. We're bringing a guest back, and this time what we're going to do is we're going to have a conversation sort of like if we were on stage in front of all of you talking about the different phases investors go through. So I've brought back Pamela Morale with me. How you doing this morning, Pamela?
Good, very good.
Excellent. So Pamela, just real quick, why don't we remind the folks of who you are, where you invest at, how long you've been in the business, and then we'll get started.
I started in '78 buying duplexes and single family homes. Since then, I always kept some rentals, did a lot of lease options to people, land contracts. I did flips. And then about 3 years ago, I began selling off everything. And now I do hard money lending and what I call semi-hard money lending. So that's what I do now.
Very, very cool. And what part of the country are you in?
I live in Florida, but I always did my investing in Indianapolis. I do my lending over a couple states.
Very, very cool. So thank you again for accepting this invitation. I had such a fun time last time we did this, and I learned a lot. So I just thought, if I'm going to do this series, I have to reach back out to Pamela and see if she'd be game. So thank you.
You're welcome.
All right.
Glad.
Awesome. So let's pretend like we're sitting in front of a room of, 100 or 1,000 or whatever you want to call people. And it's just us having a conversation. I thought what we would do is, let's rewind the clock. So for you, back to 78. So for me, back to early 2000s. And maybe just talk about, what it was like to start investing, right? I don't have any idea what it was like to start in the late 70s. So maybe you can go first. What was it like when you?
It was the late 80s.
Oh, the late 80s. Okay.
It was 87, not 78.
Oh, that makes more sense. I was like, my math is wrong. There you go. 87.
Yeah.
Interest rates were really high in 87, right?
They were. So there wasn't much real estate being sold at that time. So it was easy to get really good deals.
Excellent.
And,
so 87.
Interest rates didn't seem to bother at all. If you buy it cheap enough, it still all works.
Yeah. So let's put context on this. Do you remember what your first, I'm not even sure if you did bank financing then. Maybe you were doing owner financing. What was the interest rate like in 87?
It seems to me I was getting like about 12%.
Yeah, that would.
But I would always buy them first with my credit cards, and then I would rehab them and get somebody in them, rent them out, and then I would go for for bank financing. And at that time I had a bank that would do it just as quick as I could do it. So I was rotating those credit cards real fast into mortgages, then back into another house, and on it went.
So when you were starting, interest rates were high. Again, I think people need to hear that because, interest rates went from like 5 to 5.5 and people lost their minds. It's like, oh my gosh, real estate's unaffordable. Nothing's going to happen. No, real estate's been bought and sold for a lot higher interest rates. And you're proof of that.
Well, I think too that when there are not so many people out there buying, then you can you just get better deals. Well, if you're buying things for 50 cents on the dollar, you don't really care what interest rate you're paying to get that. And frankly, the guys and gals who do flips with me, they're not so concerned. They just need the money so that they can make good money.
Exactly.
And there's no tripping over nickels to get to the dollars. So they actually understand that concept. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. I am curious. I don't think I asked this last time. What was your average hold time, right? So you were putting on a credit card. It had the 30-day clock on it before you paid probably your first interest rate. Were you making one payment, kind of minimum payment probably, before a bank refied you out, or was it 2 months? Do you remember?
Oh, it wasn't very long. I didn't buy houses that needed huge rehabs.
Ah, okay.
They were usually, I might need to put a roof on or a furnace, one big thing, and then the carpet back when we used to put carpet and paint, and just the cleanup. And so that didn't take very long,
Okay.
uh, a month, 6 weeks.
Yeah.
I did have to make payments,
Yeah. Of
but
course. Yeah.
not for very long.
Yeah.
And
And then I have no idea what lending was like in 87. Was it still the kind of 30-day close, look at your financial statements, fill this out, or was it
it
faster,
was pretty
slower?
fast. It
Okay.
was pretty fast then, especially once I got in with a bank that got used to what I was doing. And I cannot say that I ever found that in recent years, but perhaps I wasn't looking hard enough.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is just more proof that relationships matter, right?
Sure.
Relationships mattered in 87. They mattered in 2003 when I started, and they matter today in 2019. This business is is a people business. It's not sticks and bricks and inanimate objects. It's people. Yeah.
When I first started, I would always go to the monthly meetings, the real estate investor group, and I got to know people. And one person in particular just said, "Call me anytime you've got a question," and that was so wonderful, and we became friends. But initially, she was just willing to help somebody who was new. Well, I wouldn't have had that had I not taken the time to go meet people. And that group of people that you learn to know are invaluable, because you don't have to know everything. You just need to know who knows. And when you need a plumber or a roofer or whatever, or an attorney, you you just start calling and say, who have you used lately that you were happy with,
Exactly.
and that list changes every few months. So you find somebody good for right now, but that doesn't mean a year from now they're going to be good at still,
Yeah.
and especially with contractors.
Yeah. No, totally agree. One of the things that, let's just say, I believe a lot of new investors today, because we have so much technology at our fingertips,
Yeah.
is they probably spend too much time behind their computer or their smartphone, just them in that screen, where they should put it down and go to meetups and go to real estate offices and just meet people. Would you agree that that's a key?
It it absolutely has to be done.
Yeah.
Uh, if you're out there all by yourself, uh, when push comes to shove, you're not going to have anybody to call. You're going to call somebody on the internet that you took their advice.
Yeah.
Probably not.
Yeah. Let's hope not.
Because they don't talk.
Yeah.
But the meetings usually also have an after meeting, and that's where you really get to know the people. But it does take your time to get out there and do that. But it's very important.
Yeah, I would go far as to say that if you're, and again, I put myself in this category. I was traveling all over the world when I started, and I could find time at 4 a.m. and at 11 o'clock when I wouldn't feel comfortable calling someone. So I spent a lot of time in front of my screen. And it wasn't until I figured out that, this is a networking business and getting to know people, that my business exploded, right? You can find one or two houses online, but still you're getting lucky, right? Because who knows, right? Like you said, you don't know a roofer or a contractor. You're not getting referrals, which is important for this business. So I totally agree. Get out there, meet people, even if you're in different areas, right? If you had a traveling sales job like I did, go to a meetup in a different city. You just never know, right? You'll just get that. Worst case, you get a little jolt of electricity that keeps you moving forward. So, strongly
And
recommend.
and some days and some months, that's real important.
Oh, amen. Because besides being a people business, one thing I learned is I really believe that real estate investing tests you. I think there are so many great rewards, which you and I are both reaping now, that it tests you for a decade, right? It puts bad days in front of you and hurdles and stuff. And if you let those knock you down, you don't get to enjoy the rewards, right? Do you see it the same way?
Yes, and on those bad days, and they do come,
Yeah.
that's just life. I remember what it was like to work a 9 to 5 job and have someone tell me what time to go to lunch, and and maybe had a boss who wasn't pleasant to be close to, and I'm like, well, I only have to deal with this tenant for a few minutes at a time. And it was like, oh, that's nothing compared to working a job and someone else having control of my day and telling me when I can go on vacation and when I can take off to go see my son's tennis match or musical or whatever. And the freedom to me was worth any amount of headache that I had. And frankly, I think compared to working a job that maybe you aren't fond of, um, what little inconveniences and just headaches are well worth it, and they're small.
Yeah, I think that's such a
Unless you don't do well, unless you're like not taking care of business the way you should, because you do have all this freedom. You do have to be very self-disciplined.
Yeah, that's such a nice perspective, and one I had not had. I'm gonna borrow that, right? Because I've always talked about real estate investing having bad days, and it's going to test you and all of that. But you're so right. Flip that over and just remind yourself. Well, if you have a 9 to 5 and you have a job with a boss, there's lots of not good days, right? You go to lunch from 12:30 to 1:30, be back. You only can take vacation. You're so right. I missed that because I think it's just so worn into our DNA that that's how most people live. But you're right. There's these small inconveniences in real estate investing, nothing compared to a job. So thank you. That's awesome. You there?
Like the Zoom went out.
Yeah. 1 sec. It should come back. Oh, there you go. It went red for a second, but we're still good. So I thank you for that perspective. That was very helpful. You there? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Awesome. So you got through a couple of units. You started this process with credit cards and all of that. Do you remember kind of when you transitioned to doing something else, or maybe how many units did you get to until you started seeing that this is really possible?
At 8, I could really notice a difference. At 8, not units, but 8 properties. In the early years, I did duplexes. There was more cash flow in the duplexes, and I thought that was the way to go. But I bought duplexes and singles, and I don't know, maybe 6 or 7 years in, I took a small business class, and which I had to talk my way into because they said, you're not really a small business. And in the end, I realized that I wasn't what they called a small business. So, but I had talked my way in, and I did go to all the classes. And from that, I figured out that they made me go back through all the years and figure out what the good points were and what the bad aspects of my business were. And what I found was that in the single family houses, people were staying 3 years as a regular rental. But in the duplexes, mine were only staying 9 months on each side.
Oh.
So I had so much turnover, and those were the people that called me.
Yeah.
I never liked people calling me. And so anyway, I decided that at that point I had enough single families that I should sell the duplexes, and which I think I only had 5 duplexes. And so I sold those off, and life became much easier at that point.
Yeah. I think that's such valuable advice or history lesson, if you want to call it. Maybe it's not advice, but it's experience for sure. And I share it with you. My average tenant in a home, greater than 5 years.
Oh.
My average in an apartment, which could be duplex up to my 18 units, is it's like a year and 6 months, right? But what people need to realize is it's the tenant turnover that kills us. Yes, they make more phone calls and there's more drama because people are living so close together. But it's the turnover that hurts my tax statement, right? When I fill that out.
Sure. If they will stay, and a year is not enough.
No.
Really, they need to stay about 2 years, because when they move, you've got some downtime while you're getting it ready for the next tenant, and you've got the downtime till you've rented it. So between the two, I always figured that was close to a month.
Yeah.
And sometimes longer than that, sometimes much shorter, but the average was about a month. Well, that was a whole month's rent I lost,
Yeah.
plus the fix-up cost. And so
Yeah.
I I do know people who have done 2-year leases and seem to do real well with those, but I never did do that. So
Yeah, I never did that. My area, the standards a year lease, roll month to month after that. But if you can get away with a 2-year lease, more power to you. But what I really want to highlight here with both of our experiences, and again, this is about today. I see so many new investors chasing apartments. I don't know if it's the Grant Cardone model or bigger is better or whatever that is, but everybody's looking at apartments today, and they're pricing them like single family homes. I'm like, people, your make ready and your turnover is going to kill you. Do you see
I
the
did
same
one
things?
apartment building. It was 44 units. I just personally didn't like it. I did a good job at it and I made a lot of money at it, but I personally did not like the intrusion on my time.
Yeah.
And you've got so many people under one roof that you need to take care of, and where people in single family houses are just a different breed. They expect to take care of themselves unless the roof leaks or the furnace goes out.
Right.
They will call you for the little things, or mine didn't. But in the apartments, that's just it's a bare step above uh, a
Yeah.
bare step above a hotel, or
Yeah. I can always tell when I have I don't know if I want to call it a newbie or a novice or whatever that is, but they start talking about, well, apartments are great because there's one roof and, there's, all of those things. And I'm like, well, in your case, you had 44. In my case, my biggest is 18. You have 18 family groupings like crammed together. And who's to say somebody's crazy uncle or neighbor doesn't piss off so-and-so, and pretty soon the police are called because so-and-so said something to someone, and then just the drama factor in an apartment building is crazy.
yes, it really was.
Yeah.
And I even had a lady who managed it for me mostly, but they all knew that the buck stopped right here with me. And
Yeah.
I'd try and sneak in there on a Sunday to get some paperwork done. Oh, they had a phone line, I think, that went through there. They start knocking on the door. I wouldn't be in there 10 minutes and they'd start lining up out the door to ask me about this or that.
Yeah. How long
And
did
maybe that
you?
was my fault for not really stepping further away. But 44 units is not a huge building either.
Oh
So,
no. Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
uh,
What were the details? How long did you own it? It's 44 units, single story, double story. Do you
it
remember?
was a double story, and it was actually 3 buildings
Okay.
no, 4 buildings in a um, they used to have a pool in the middle, and
Oh yeah,
it was a
courtyard.
courtyard thing. There were 2 courtyards and 4 buildings. And um, what was the next question you asked me about it?
I was wondering how long did you own it?
Oh, I owned it 2.5 years.
And you're like,
It,
that's
and it
enough.
was
I'm out.
it was a total flip job because it'd been very poorly run for a long time. So it just basically needed to be cleaned up and better tenants and raise the rents and renovate some units that hadn't been renovated in 40 years, and get rid of a couple tenants that were just horrible, but that the old owner just wouldn't.
When
He said, "Oh, they've been here 20 years." I'm like, "Yes, I see."
Yeah.
And I didn't get into that with him, but because he needed out and
Yeah.
I wanted in, and but I knew immediately, when he said, Oh, you won't. There's 3 units you won't want to go into. I'm. Oh yeah, those people have to go.
Yeah, time to go.
And yes, I have to get in.
Yeah,
And
that's
I
awesome.
only, I only stepped in the door, though. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, it's like, oh, seen enough, knew everything, I'm out. It sounds like you bought that on purpose to flip it.
Yes, I didn't think I was. Well, no, I think originally I thought I would keep it,
Okay.
but within 9 months, I knew I wouldn't keep it very long.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Value add, and then, ring the register and move on to something that's less stressful, less work.
right, right. And I sold it right in 2008.
Ah,
So it was, I had cash in hand then to go out and buy single family houses.
good for
And
you. Good
so
for
that
you.
was nice.
Yeah. Very cool. So for me, my kind of transition was kind of very similar, right? I was doing single family homes for the first 6 or 7 years. I did have one duplex. But then what we did is we couldn't buy anymore, right? The market, again, for us in 2008 was too expensive, where I was investing. But financing was so easy, right? I never really understood when I read all the history books about financing and, debt to ratios and all of that, because, Countrywide would give me a loan anytime I asked. It was kind of fun. And then 2008 happened, and then I understood what not getting a bank loan was all about, because they turned us off for about a decade. So I'm curious, in your history, when did you go to private money or hard money as the borrower, not as the lender? Did you ever go
I
there?
never did.
You
I
never
never,
did.
no.
Yeah.
I did buy, I think I only bought 2 properties with owner financing. Uh, and then I went to some seminar and they said, you can ask them for a discount when you pay them off, and and I did. I think I bought this house for 12,000. I think I'd only made 1 or 2 payments, and I called the gal and I said, I think I've got some money coming in, and if you can discount that mortgage, I could go ahead and pay it off if you can discount it enough. Let me know how much you think you could take for it. And so
Ah,
that 12,000 loan became a 9,000. Unfortunately, I was sitting in my accountant's office when that call came in. He said, you have to pay taxes on
yeah,
that $3,000. And I said, you got to be kidding me.
yeah,
And he said, no, that was a gain to you. So I still had to pay taxes on it.
yeah. I was
But it
gonna
was
ask.
still $3,000 I didn't have to pay back. So
There you go. That's awesome. Those darn accountants. That's funny. So one of the things that's a little different in our story is I went to the hard money route from like 2009 through probably 11, because no banks would lend to me and stuff was on sale. So I had to do something. And my pile of assets wasn't big enough to be done. And then I realized that, there's this thing called private money, right? Friends and family and all of that. And people were so scared, right? Do you remember that time, like when Bear Stearns and, those guys went out of business? Did that kind of, hit you at all?
what I had done prior to that was I had gotten lines of credit on rental properties.
Ah,
So, and I didn't owe anything on them. So I used that money for quite a while. Uh,
okay.
and uh, that was nice. And I still use that money. I still have some of those lines of credit and I still use them. And those are nice because they're readily available and you don't have to ask anyone for the money. So when you get yourself to the spot where you have something free and clear or close to it, you can go get that line of credit. They didn't cost me anything for the loan, which was also very nice compared to getting a regular mortgage. And the rates have been so low for so long that on some of those lines of credit, I was only paying 3.5%
Yeah,
for a while. There were times when I loaned that money.
I'm sure. Yeah. Hey, I can borrow at 3.5 and loan at 12. Sounds like easy math to me.
Yeah. So
Get some points up
that's
front.
how I got around it. And I still always had that great big stack of credit cards.
Ah,
And they would send me those 0 interest. And I didn't mind putting a house, buying a house with that 0 interest money. It wasn't long term, but usually it lasted for at least a year.
yeah.
And sometimes I would move it from one 0 interest to another 0 interest if I somehow hadn't got it paid off in time. And
I have never bought a house with a credit card. I'm wondering how that works. Do you take the checks that they send you and you write a check, or do you somehow wire it, or do you actually literally swipe the credit card?
uh, well, actually, I'm using some credit card money right now.
Okay.
And it came with checks. And
Checks.
so I
Okay.
wrote the check and just put the check in my account.
Okay.
And sometimes they want to pay something off, a balance transfer.
Uh-huh.
And then I will have them send the money to my line of credit and
Yeah.
pay off the line, pay off some of the line of credit. And then I've got that line of credit freed up to
Perfect.
use it again. So I always say I'm just good at moving money around. You know?
Moving zeros and ones around from institution to institution. Good for you. Good for you.
I
So
hope that's not money laundering. No,
it's all in your name, so I'm sure it's not. Or
it's
you're
all
in.
in yeah, it's all in my name. But I will say that when I go to get a loan, which I did just recently to buy a condo for myself, um, they have a real hard time with that moving money around thing. They it's just, you know, they're used to punching in, well, they've got this much money coming in from this job,
Yeah.
and I don't have any of that. And so when you say, they'll say, well, where'd that money come from? And then you tell them, and their eyes begin to glass over because it's just too intricate. It
Yeah.
doesn't make any difference to me, but it does to them.
Yeah. They
And
want to tie it all together.
so moving things around, it gets tough then to go back to the banks.
Yeah. Very cool. So let's when do you consider yourself kind of retired or out of the game, or are you still in the game, or how do you sort of frame that in your own mind?
Uh, I'm I'm in the game in a different area now because I only do the lending.
Okay, yeah, let's talk about that transition. So you go from being what I'll call active in the business, right? Doing your things, your flips, all of that, to now is semi-passive probably. What was that transition like?
Well, it took 3 years, so
Okay.
it was, in my mind, it went real slow, and and I went from working on maybe 25 hours a week to now it's maybe 10 hours a week.
Okay.
So maybe not even that some weeks. So because now all I do is keep track of things and
Yeah.
paperwork. Uh, it's difficult not hunting the deal anymore. I will say there's something addictive about hunting the next good deal. And I may get out there and hunt a few deals, but this market needs to cool down a bit for me because I only want a deal if it's a really good one.
Yeah.
And it takes time and effort to get out there and find those really good deals. So I guess I'm a little lazy as I have
Yeah.
gone along, and I'm like, I want those good deals to just come to me with no effort.
There
That's not true, but the market where I live here in Florida is very hot.
Yeah.
I live in the St. Pete area, and it, I would really have to buy some real junkers to
Yeah.
be able to get a good deal, and I just don't have the heart for doing full rehabs again.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that's a great place to be. And, you've seen, what would you say? Have you seen 2, maybe 3 full cycles, right? Crazy hot, everything's on sale. Crazy hot, everything's on sale.
I'd say two,
2
two
full cycles.
full, two full cycles, uh, maybe 2.5. When I came in, things were, uh, you could buy things cheaply.
All right, so 2.5, yeah, because we're
Yeah,
at the peak
2.5.
of the next one.
We're at the peak of the next one.
I guess I'm curious on this one. When so you have 2.5. I have 1.5. I guess it was hot when I started and it's hot again. So yeah, I guess 1.5. Do you see any similarities to when stuff rolls over?
I don't.
Yeah,
I
because
don't.
the last
I just
one, go ahead.
the last one was everything was so hot. Uh, Prices were just out of the ballpark, and they seem to be that way right now. But the economy is so good right now. I'm not thinking it's going to roll over just yet. I think it may be another 2 years, maybe three. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't see how it could.
Everybody's
There's
working,
every, yep, exactly.
everybody's working, and salaries are starting to go up. And so that's not when the downturns come.
Yeah. And also lending is much better. It's like real lending. It's not just signature lending, and everybody's got a 3 or a 4% interest rate fixed. I just don't know. I just don't see how it can roll over. I think it slows down because maybe I think what we're going to lose is the move up buyers, right? People that moved into their first time home. Now, normally it's been a decade or maybe 8 years, they would move up, but they're like, I'm not going to trade a 3.5% interest for a 6.5. They're just going to stay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think you're right.
Yeah. So,
The good deals are still out there, but you've got to hunt them.
yeah, one thing I would tell you is I wrote about this in my book. We only took over 15 or 16 years. There were only 2 6-month windows where we didn't buy anything. One is that right when Bear Stearns evaporated, right? We thought the world was ending, right? We said, nope, stop, no more. And then for us, when the hedge funds came in at the bottom, it was so fundamentally different. We're like, oh, what happened? Where they, again, like what's going on? Other than that, we've been buying, right? We bought on the way up, we bought on the way down. You just never can predict. So were you always an active buyer, or did you take years off?
It never took years off until the last three.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
I was always an active buyer. That's what the part I liked. So
Yeah, that was the fun part, right? The addictive part.
that was the fun part. That's
Yeah.
right. That's the fun part. Now, I did have someone recently tell me something that I hadn't heard anyone else use for locating properties, people who want out of the property. And this guy he was going for the properties where the city has told them they need to repair the roof, or code violation, some kind of violation with the city. And he would find out who they were, and then rather than send them a card or a letter like everybody's doing now, he would actually go the extra mile and find their phone number and give them a call. And he was doing real well with that. And that's just been recently.
Yeah.
And the other thing was, he said sometimes he would just go down to the court and sit in the court and talk to people before. And as people were leaving, he would chat with them and, just tell them he's looking for properties to buy. And
Uh-huh.
and it was having very good. Now this is lower end properties. But that's almost everyone's niche in the beginning is the lower end properties, because that's where the cash flow is. And in the beginning, you've got to have that cash flow. You have to eat,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you have to eat it. Good point. So I'm curious, now that we get to the end of this and we kind of wrap it up, any surprises in the last 3 years where you've kind of made that transition to semi-passive, 5-10 hours a week versus, hunting for deals? Anything you look at going, wow, either A, I didn't expect this surprise, or I didn't expect this, maybe a negative surprise. Any thoughts?
I've watched Indianapolis and some of my investor friends there, and people that were willing to go into some of the tougher neighborhoods in the inner city that have now turned around or are in the process of turning around are doing very well. They're now able to flip houses that they bought for almost nothing, for good bucks. They're doing well. And I had properties in some of those areas, and I couldn't get rid of them fast enough. And I think perhaps I was a little short-sighted. I couldn't see what wasn't there.
Yeah.
And anyway, that's probably it. Otherwise, it's been a nice life, and I've enjoyed it, and it was a good you wear a lot of hats as a real estate investor, and I enjoyed that every day was a little different.
Yeah,
And
that's awesome. When did you move to St. Pete? When did that become your primary residence? The last 3 years?
we've been here about 3 years
Okay.
off and on, and the last year we've pretty much stayed here most of the time.
Yeah, very cool. I am curious with this last question. How many different, I guess loans or investments are you in at the moment?
Um,
Roughly is fine.
about 20.
Oh, wow. That's bigger than I expected. Okay. And then they roll off all at different times, I'm assuming?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Rolling off and rolling in.
So that explains why you're still spending at least 10 hours a week, because that's not insignificant, right? 20 different transactions. If they average, do they kind of like average 4 months, 5 months?
The flippers usually do less than, the good ones do less than 4 months. And almost all of them do within a year, but
Yeah.
most of them are pretty quick. And then I have some of the longer term ones. And then we call them land contracts in Indiana. In Florida, they call them contracts for deed. And
Yeah.
those are properties I had owned already that I've sold with owner financing.
Very good. Any experience? Because that's something that I'm actually just considering now. We own a bunch of stuff free and clear, and I'm like, you know what? Maybe I should look at owner financing some of these. Any words of wisdom on that idea? Any,
Uh,
yeah,
in
good
some ways,
experience?
it's not much different than renting a place, and you
Ah.
often get them back.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yes, you often get them back. So you need people that have a down payment,
Yeah.
which often they'll try and get in without one. And I know this is very old fashioned, but I actually go to their house to take their application,
Yeah.
because if they've trashed the rental they're in, they're about to trash my house that they're buying from me. And when it's really trashed, they'll give it back to me. So in some ways, I run it really almost like a rental as far as the application process goes.
That's great advice. Thank you.
They don't have great credit, though. They never have good credit. And my son has done these with higher end houses, and frankly, he finds the same thing. They give them back to him, or they refinance them.
Yeah.
But it's the getting them back is then you've got to do it again,
Yeah.
which you make money doing it again. But that wasn't the choice, and
Right.
always, they leave with little bad feelings about how they were going to stay, but for whatever reason they're not.
Mm-hmm.
And, so.
Very cool. Did you have a standard down payment? Did you look for 5% or 3%, or do you remember?
It depends on the property, of course, and the condition of the property. If it needs some work, then of course I ask for less, but probably more like 5% down.
Okay. Yeah. Very cool. Because we're evaluating that right now, and we might take a couple of our lower end things to your point and go, you know what, that's enough. They cash flow, but they're free and clear. So maybe it's time to sell those. And because again, we're near the peak of the market, right? So move stuff around.
I have sold some of those lower end houses to other investors on land contracts. That makes it easy for them because they can't go out and get a loan for them.
Yeah.
And they'll put more money down, and they'll make higher payments, and then your person who's going to live in the house will.
Yeah. Okay. Very cool. Thank you for that. Any as we wrap this up, any kind of words of wisdom for someone's been doing it since 87, thinking about, again, the audience in front of us, 100, 1,000 kind of new investors. We kind of walked through a journey that we both had. Any last words of wisdom for them?
It is work. It's like having a second job if you still have your first job. And if they're telling you how easy it is, it's not necessarily easy. It's another job, and I think it's a great job. And I've known people who worked their whole lives and just had a few, and it added to their retirement and added to their income over the years. And so it's either, if you really like your job, if you enjoy going there every day, well, then rentals are nice on the side.
Yeah.
Just have have 3 or 4 or 5 and let it go at that.
Yeah, that's great advice, because that's actually one thing I'm pushing now. Like you, I get invited out to speak a lot, and we talk about, everybody wants to talk about financial independence, right? And then you get everybody in the audience's head nod, their big smiles, they want to take your picture. But then when they go to their car, I can imagine them having a conversation with their spouse or their significant other going, that's great for them, but we can't do it. So what I've done now is I talk about just getting to 4. Let's just get to 4 rentals. Let's fundamentally change your future by having 4 rental properties. Even if you love your job, to your point, it's a great place to be. Would you agree?
Yes, and I remember when I got to 4 that it made a significant difference in my monthly income. And when I got to 8, then I left my job, which I wasn't making much money on.
Right.
So.
Very cool. Well, I think that's a great way to end. You'll get to 4, you change your life, get to 8, you really can leave your job. So Pamela, I want to thank you for your time. It's always great to talk to you. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.